Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to beautiful Carlsbad, New Mexico, and we're filming today the Faces of Carlsbad here at this beautiful county courthouse in Eddy County in the heart of Carlsbad. And we're on Channel 23, of course, and we're sponsored by Intrepid Potash. They put up with my nonsense. Isn't that nice? It makes you feel good. But anyway, we introduce people to you on a program called The Faces of Carlsbad. And many of these people you might have met before, many of them you might know. Every so often you'll have one that you don't know, but the man I'm going to interview next I've known for a long time, and his name is Klaus. And Harold,
hey, how are you doing
great to
today?
have you. I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks here. Well, anyway. Oh, by the way, did I mention that we're sponsored by Intrepid Potash?
I think you did.
I want to make sure we get them in because they put up with me and it's wonderful. Well, Harold, let's go back in the early days of where your parents came from, where you were born, etc.
Well, my parents actually came from Missouri, and my father, when he completed his college education, had joined the Air Force, and I was born in Oklahoma on an Air Force base. Spent about 6 months there. And through the years, my family really enjoyed living out here in the West, and they didn't like the humidity that much. And so, you know, Carlsbad has well, very, very dry air, and it's a nice place, and that's where they ended up because of the whip. And well, I didn't actually show up here with my parents. They'd moved ahead of us. And I came several years later because they gotten involved in a local business here in Carlsbad.
I see.
And so they called me up and they said, hey, would you come help us with this business? It's a little bit more than what we expected. And I ended up moving my family here and been here now for about 9-10 years.
Oh, tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, my mom and dad both lived here for about 15 years. My mother passed away about 2 years ago, and my father moved actually to Hobbs just recently, within about the last year. He's retired from the Air Force, and he's also retired from Department of Energy. He was part of the WIP group here in Carlsbad for many years. And so,
oh my gosh. So he was in the military for...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my whole family, both my grandfather, my father, myself, many of my uncles, you know, all spent some time in the different militaries. I joined the Army, and my dad had joined the Air Force, and I spent about 24 years in a combination of active duty, reserve, National Guard, through the years in the military myself. And I ended up retiring a captain from the Army. In fact, I spent a short amount of time here in Carlsbad as the local commander for the engineering unit.
Yeah, I remember that. We talked about that, I believe, on radio.
Well, I think the last time you and I talked about all this, I was involved in trying to organize the yellow ribbon ceremony and getting everybody together for the guys coming back from Afghanistan. Yeah. And that was really the last thing that I did in the military before I retired, was try to put that together. And gosh, that was just a fantastic event. I mean, everybody in the whole area came by. Your sponsor and many other companies here in town, the bike riders. I mean, it was just amazing the amount of support that we got to welcome those guys home when they came home. They were surprised. They still talk about it today because I still see them on a regular basis with the ESGR, which is the Employee Support of the Guard and Reserve.
Yeah, in fact, I joined that group one time when we went to Clovis.
Oh, did you? Did you go on one of the boss lifts?
Well, they were going to, but the weather was bad, so they decided they wouldn't do that. But we went up there and spent the entire weekend, and that was a great experience for me because it brought back a lot of memories when I was in the military. I was in the Army also, and it just, I don't know, I just felt really good. Somebody said, well, the weather's not good, so we won't be going up in a helicopter today. And I said, well, that's fine with me. I don't do very well in helicopters.
Well, about 2 weeks ago, the 920th Engineers, which is the local unit here, had an open house. And we also had a ESGR banquet, and that's where you invite the employers of the Guardsmen and women
Right.
to the unit, and you give them recognition with for supporting the guys with jobs,
Right.
and allowing them to go and serve in the National Guard, because it's difficult sometimes for employers that way. And so we have an annual banquet where we invite everybody in, and they did a show and tell. They had all the weapon systems out there, and the trucks and the trailers. We did a big barbecue. But the day before, we were able to get 2 Black Hawk helicopters, and we flew them down, and about 20 of the bosses here in town were able to go on a helicopter ride around Carlsbad, and I went outside and I saw them flying over. There's 2 of them flying in formation over the city. So if you'd seen a couple about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you saw.
I did see them.
Well, that was the bosses all taking a ride of the different soldiers, so they kind of got a feel for what the guys are doing maybe on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then we had a banquet the next day where we showed them the weapons and the vehicles and stuff like that. Since I've retired, I don't do any of that stuff anymore. Now I'm just trying to help some of the soldiers through the ESGR program to if they ever run into any problems with employment. And then the other side of the house is if the employers ever run into problems with the soldiers, the ESGR is in the middle to try to facilitate it a little bit.
Now, you're married. You said your wife.
I am. I'm married.
Where did your wife come from?
My wife is Dutch, so she's from Holland.
She's from the Netherlands.
So when we moved to New Mexico, I had been activated in the Army in 2003 at the beginning of the war after 9/11, and I come home. We were actually living in Europe, and so when my folks had called me to come help them with the business here in town, we were actually living in Holland, and we packed up and we moved the house and the kids and the cats and dogs.
The cats, huh? You had cats. Oh, that's
and
good.
brought them all here to Carlsbad.
Now, did your wife? Did she miss Holland when?
She still does. I mean, there's a believe it or not, a little bit of a cultural difference between living in Central Europe and here in Carlsbad.
Yeah.
What she's used to is kind of the weather that we're having today. It's cloudy, it's a little bit cooler, it rains a lot, lots of grass, lots of trees, land of tulips. You got lots of flowers.
The Netherlands is a very beautiful country.
Very beautiful place.
Yeah.
And it's very beautiful here too, but what she misses is that climate where for her, here it's awful hot sometimes in the summertime, and she's just not used to that. The other interesting thing that we've noticed is in Holland, it's one of the most densely populated countries in the world, and so
It is.
I mean, there's a lot of people that work and live together in a very small space, and here it's the exact opposite. We have one of the sparsest populations in the country, where you can drive 10 miles out of Carlsbad and you might not see somebody all day long if you're going in the right direction.
Oh, I know it. Well, does she? Do you ever get back to visit?
Occasionally, she tries to go back and visit, and we're trying to put another trip together so we can fly back. We get 4 kids and 6 people traveling at once. The international airline flights, it gets a little expensive, and so we have to pace it whenever we go back on the trips. What we really do is a lot of her family flies over and visits a lot. And so we'll have her mom or her sister or her brother or friends at least once a year. We pretty much get one visitor, and when they come, they don't come for 2 weeks, they come for a couple months, and they stay, and it's real nice. Just about time everybody's ready to go home, it's time to go home. And so she gets that. And then with the internet nowadays, she can read all the newspapers, and she can keep up with it. My kids also speak Dutch.
They do?
Yeah, at the house they speak only speak Dutch. My wife, and then during the day, they speak English at school. So we're trying to raise them bilingual, because that's real important.
That is wonderful. Do they fly KLM Airlines?
No,
Royal Dutch Airlines?
No, not very often. It's a little bit expensive to fly KLM, but
okay.
no, we fly on whoever has the cheapest rate that week, and we don't worry too much about how many stops we're making in route there.
Or do you fly to Amsterdam?
No, normally you fly into Germany.
Oh, into Germany,
yeah, because
Frankfurt?
we go a little bit further up north into Dusseldorf.
Oh.
There's a lot of different places where you can fly in, major hubs, just like you'd have in the United States.
Yeah.
You can fly into an Atlanta or a Chicago or a Houston or just a major city. Well, in Europe it's the same way, and sometimes it's cheaper to fly into, say, one of the smaller mid-sized cities like Dusseldorf than it is to fly into one of the bigger cities like Amsterdam or Brussels, and then you have the traveling anyways. I mean,
Well, the rail service is so good over there.
yeah,
too.
you could always get on train and take the train wherever you want to go, or you can drive. It's not, where we're used to driving an hour to go to Roswell and think nothing of it. Oh, we'll go to Roswell today. You're halfway across the country in Holland.
That's right.
And that's considered a major, long trip. I remember one time we went to Paris from where we live, and it was a 6-hour drive, and that's almost like us driving to Albuquerque a little bit further to go to Disneyland. And that was a major event. That we were literally driving halfway across Europe to go to Disneyland, and to put it in perspective, here we think nothing of driving to Midland or Odessa or up to Albuquerque. So the distances are it's a whole different perspective. They got to also realize that the costs involved are a lot higher for like car travel there than it is here.
Yeah.
Where I don't know what the cost of gas is today, but I remember when we lived there, it was exchange rate out somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 or $8 a gallon then. And so I don't know what it is today, but so if you were going to drive somewhere, we already are starting to slow down at $4 a gallon. Could you imagine what we would be doing if we were talking about $8 a gallon? And then on top of that, you have a road tax, and that's something that we don't have here in the States, which is a little bit different.
Yes, that's right. That's something that I'm glad you brought up.
Yeah, because what happens is your car weight has an impact on how much damage you're going to do to the road. So let's say you have a Honda Civic. It weighs 1,500 pounds, and it's a gas engine. They're going to charge you, say, $50 a month for the privilege of just owning that car.
Holy mackerel.
And let's say that now at the time, diesel was a little bit less money per gallon. It's changed now, but back in the day, it was a little bit less. So a lot of the European manufacturers have diesel engines. And you see that in a lot of the Volkswagens and things. So you say, well, you know what I'll do? I will drive a diesel car, same size car, but a diesel engine instead of a gas engine, because it gets, the gas is a little bit cheaper, and I can drive farther.
Oh, yeah.
Well, to get around that, what they do is they give you they charge you $75, because you're going to drive more, you're going to do more damage. And then it keeps on going to LPG gas. You can actually go and get liquid propane gas as a standard for your car, but then they charge you $150 a month for the privilege of having the car, because they figure you're going to drive that much more. And so really people have to base their travel on how far they're going to drive and how big the car is that they're going to drive, because the more that car weighs, the more that basic tax goes up. So if you're driving an F-250 pickup truck, it could be double or triple. That's on top of the gas costs. So you don't see big trips like that to Albuquerque. You just don't do it as much, and that's why they have a lot of the mass transit, the buses, the trains, and other means of transportation
Rail
and flying.
Rail service in Europe is outstanding.
Oh yeah, and you can also fly. You can fly fairly cheaply as well. Just because of the amount of people and the amount of traffic, they just really discourage driving. And so that's a big change between here and there. Here we just jump in our car and go wherever we want to, and really don't think twice about it.
Well, now, since your wife is Dutch and your children speak fluent Dutch, do you also speak fluent Dutch?
No, not really well. I speak some. I understand a lot of what they're saying. Being married to my wife for as long as I have, you have to learn it. And I lived in Europe for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I speak a lot of the language, but I never consider myself fluent. The Dutch, here's the thing about her culture, is basically they go through their first 4 or 5 years of school in Dutch, just like we would traditionally here in the States.
Right.
But then in middle school, they start teaching them English. And by high school, they're actually taking the entire high school curriculum in English. And Dutch is a second language. And so that's why when you run into some of the Dutch folks, they speak English as well as we do. and it's because it doesn't matter what you do in life, it doesn't matter how far you've gone with your education. They've already embedded that second language or that third language, because then on top of that you're going to learn a second language, which could be English, could be French, it could be German. And so basically when they finish school, they're going to have 3 different languages. And so,
now, the name Klaus, your family background goes back, what, to Germany?
originally it was Germany.
Yeah.
If you go back a couple generations back, I think it was my great-grandfather's parents actually immigrated here from Germany, and then they ended up in Missouri, and that's where my parents came from.
Yeah, mine immigrated from Germany also.
There's a lot of there's a lot of German immigration back in 1880s, 1870s, 1890s, prior to World War I, and then right up until World War I, and then.
Well, tell us a little bit about your military career when you were sent to Iraq.
Okay.
What kind of feelings did you have toward the people? Were they nice to you, some of them?
Well, what was interesting about what I did, we didn't have a huge amount of interaction with the average Iraqi citizen. We were a transportation company, and so we had 60 Freightliner semis in our company, about 175 men and women that were in our unit, and we were transporting supplies from about what you would consider the middle of Iraq in a northerly route. So we'd go up into Baghdad, we'd go into other places where the United States had military bases or outposts, and I was there prior to the surge, and so at that point, we basically controlled all the roads, controlled all the routes, and there wasn't a lot of interaction. If we were coming, the Iraqis would just basically move to the side, and we just go on by with our military transports and things. When we did have opportunity to interact with them, it was an amazing thing. It was almost, it depends on where you were. If you're in the southern part of Iraq or outside of the major cities, the people were Bedouins, basically haven't changed probably in
thousands of years, I would imagine.
In a long time.
Yeah.
You would see herders in the desert that were migratory, and they would move their animals wherever the grass was. And what was interesting was it reminded me a lot of some of the biblical stories where if they said they went out and dug a well, and they dug a well. Well, here, if we go out and dig a well, it's a several-day event. You got to bring in the heavy machinery, and you're digging down 100 feet or 200 feet.
That's right.
Well, in southern Iraq, you dig down about 6 feet, and you hit water table. You wouldn't know it that there's a desert above, but just the water is just a few feet below the water. You go a little bit further, and you would see in the countryside, the ladies were basically gathering up supplies, sticks, and things like that for cooking. You'd see that. You would see the kids running around, and anything that fell off the trucks or anything that could be used, was salvaged and put to work by the folks there. The Iraqi people themselves, whenever we had any interaction with them, were really, really nice. I think a lot of the tensions there is not probably the vast majority. I think it's probably a small minority.
Small minority, I think.
That
right.
just like we have a group of people that have a lot of fundamentalist views and sometimes lean towards violence.
Yeah.
I think in that community, there's some people that's the same way. They have fundamentalist views that lead to that. So, you can't judge a whole culture just by the few that cause problems.
Very good point. Let's get up to what you're doing now, though. How did you get involved in your business?
Well, my parents were going to retire, and they bought Carlsbad Small Engine about 13 years ago. And they ran it for a couple of years, and they realized there was really a lot more activity and a lot more things that needed to be done than they expected. And so they knew that I was coming back off of active duty, and so they called me up and said, hey, would you mind moving to Carlsbad and helping us with the store? And so I packed up the family, and family calls you and asked for some help, and we moved here to Carlsbad. And so through the years, we've had a couple of other stores. Right now we have a store in Roswell called All Seasons, and we have a store here in Carlsbad called Carlsbad Small Engine, and I spend about half my time either in Roswell running that store, or down here in Carlsbad
Oh my
running this
gosh,
store.
yeah.
Back and forth on 285 almost every day, driving back and forth. And so through the years, the store's gotten bigger and grown, and it's been a pretty neat experience. And we're kind of like the morticians. Eventually, everybody's going to come see us. You've only got a couple choices in town, and so I always laugh at everybody. I say, well, I see a lot of people in town just because eventually your mower's going to break, and they eventually come over and see us here at our shop.
Now, what about Mr. Lutman has a three-wheel tricycle with a motor on it. Now, if something goes wrong with his tricycle, can he bring it by your shop?
Well, it all depends if he's left his training wheels on or not, because what I'm really worried about is the liability. If he can't ride it well, once I soup that up and it gets out of there, he could hurt himself. So I'll make sure he leaves those wheels on before he brings it into.
Okay, yeah, very, very good point. So you fix just about everything that deals with small...
It does. A lot of folks think of us just as the lawnmower shop, and what's amazing is that a lot of our business has nothing to do with outdoor power equipment. We get a lot of the oil-filled spoolers that will come in that are ran by large Honda engines. We get industrial equipment in all the time. So basically with our business, what we do is we fix things. And if it has a engine on it that's 30 horsepower or less, that's basically my niche, then what it's attached to, I could really care less. It's the engine that we're working on, trying to make sure that it works well. So we get hedgers, edgers, mowers, blowers, pumps, compressors, generators, and then three-wheel tricycles with engines strapped to them all the time, and go-karts, a lot of go-karts.
Go-karts.
We get some ATVs in, dirt bikes, scooters, just basically, that's a small niche. It's not a car. We don't really work on car engines too much, but everything from about 30 horsepower down is what we do. And so to do that, some of the things we've done to try to show some ideas is on this channel, we also have a TV show that we've started, and it's called Ask the Mower Guy. And
this is on Channel 23?
On 23, and it runs once or twice a month. We'll do a new show, and in fact, we're just about to come out with a new one here in the next week or so. And I look a little different because I had my hair was a little bit longer, and I had a full beard at the time.
Oh,
so,
you did?
Yeah, nobody's going to recognize me when they...
No wonder I didn't recognize you.
But I just got my hair cut. But on the Ask the Mower Guy show, what we do is we try to show people how to do basic maintenance on their lawn and garden equipment.
Yeah.
So the first episode, and then was on lawnmowers and bad gas and changing spark plugs and changing filters. And then the second episode is going to be on your trimmer and doing some trimmer maintenance and stuff like that. And what we do is we ask people, hey, go to our website, which is askthemowerguy.com, and there they can read our blog. And I have a weekly blog that I put on there where we talk about all sorts of different things. I think this week's blog was change your spark plugs like you change politicians, and that was the topic of it, and it worked out pretty good. Basic
that.
Yeah, well, the basic idea was, take it out, take a look at it. If it's still shiny and new and working like it was when you put it in, put it back in the engine, it's probably good to go. If you take that spark plug out and it looks a little dirty and it's not working as well, it's probably time to change it. The same thing. So basically, I have my blog and I run that every week. My first blog I put on there, I said never give the microphone to the shop because we'll probably tell you something you want to hear. But
if somebody has a car, for example, and drives up and wants you to look at their spark plugs, would you do that?
I might. It just depends on what it is. I mean, we're not so much in the automotive. Motorcycles we can look at, scooters, go-karts, 30 horsepower and smaller. I mean, very, very simple things we might be able to do on cars. But we just there's a lot of car dealers in town and a lot of people that work on that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but I'm a friend of yours.
Well, that's
If
true.
I came by, you wouldn't turn me away, would you?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what you have. It depends on what you're driving.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Well, what do you do in your spare time?
Well, right now I don't have a whole lot of spare time, to be honest with you. I retired from the Army, and what we've last year, over the last couple of years, I went back to school and finished up my MBA, and so that took all the time I had in the world to do that. And now what I've really been focusing on is this Ask the Mower Guy website, the TV show, trying to get that produced. the blog, and then also running the 2 stores. And
Oh, that's right. You have 2 stores.
we have
One
2
in
stores
in Roswell and in here.
and then I try to help out wherever I can. Like I said, I was in the ESGR, and I participate in those functions. I try to help my kids who are in the band at the high school.
Oh, they are.
And so where I can, I try to help out there with flipping some burgers on game night or something like that. And then
Oh, we won't discuss that. I'm a vegetarian. so-
well, you know, we'll just give you a bun and charge you the same price.
Oh,
but,
okay, that's good.
it's for the children. You know, you
That's
got
right.
you have to be willing to pay a little bit for the children, and then I try to help out with other things, you know, just in the community when I'm asked. And so, but most of my time spent right now just focusing on the business and you know, doing what we're doing right with the stores.
How old are your children now?
Well, I've got a 18-year-old, and then it goes all the way down to a 7-year-old. I've got 4, and so I've got 2 in the middle, and that's the spread. So they're in 2 groups, a girl and a boy. Yeah, I got 2 in high school and 2 in elementary. Nobody in the middle.
Nobody in the middle.
Nobody in the middle.
That's fantastic. But in the evening, when the day is over,
Right.
how do you relax?
Well, basically, when I get home, what I tend to do is take a look at my you know, the emails for the day that's come in, look at what you know, my family's done on some of the social media networks, and try to stay in touch with everybody. Hang out with my kids if they need help with homework or they want to play and do stuff, or just work around the house, working on the yard. I've got about half an acre of yard, and you know, about gosh, I don't know, 40 or 50 rose bushes and trees, and you know, it just takes a lot of constant care to keep that up as well. And when I can, that's basically what I like to work on in the evenings. Just be solitude of just working in the yard and making it pretty for the family.
And then when you go to bed at night, I bet you drop off just like that.
Oh yeah. With one of the things that's happened is on my last deployment, I got a little hurt, and so I've got pretty bad arthritis in my shoulders and feet, knees, hips, and I've had a few surgeries on them and stuff like that. And so by the time I've gotten done working all day, it's real, you know, tiring on me, and I pretty much just fall right off to sleep. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Harold, for being our guest today, and I want you to go home and get
Oh.
a good night's sleep tonight. This is ridiculous.
Oh, I'm fine.
On behalf of Channel 23, we want to thank you for watching the Faces of Carlsbad again, and I'll bet you'll see Harold around.
Oh yeah.
If you need help, he'll be there, right?
Oh, absolutely. You need to come to our website and take a look at what we're doing. If you have any questions, just post your questions right there at the website, and we'll be glad to answer them.
Or if they're like me and they don't have any knowledge of internets, I'm plain stupid.
We're easy. We're just down the street from the high school.
Yeah,
just
I
come
just
by.
walk up there and say hello, right?
Absolutely.
Oh,
That's what we do.
good. Well, thanks a
buddy.
million, Harold.
See you
It's
later.
been a pleasure.
Thanks.
What a day. Channel 23. Intrepid Potash in the Faces of Carlsbad. Goodbye and good luck.